Alrighty, I'm live. I am live and I'm excited that my guest today on the Pleasure is All Yours Instagram Live channel is somebody very special to me, D'ana Baptiste, who I did my yoga teacher training with, and I want to say 2008, maybe 2009. That's what happens as you get older. It gets confusing. But either way, we are going to talk about a bunch of different things, but one of the main things is how yoga is a catalyst for mind-body connection. But also, I'm excited to share with people. I've been started doing these Instagram lives now every other week, and with different people that are either, in basically the field that I'm working in or complementary fields. And so, of course, I for sure thought of you. Not only because I've just undergone this journey of writing a book, and I know that you've done that, and you've done that with, is it 3 or 4 books?
Well, yeah, 3, but they're all related. So it was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to definitely talk about what your books are about. I also wanted to, and this might be biting off way more than I can chew as far as just that fundamental idea of how, because when I think of how much my yoga teacher training was transformative for me, and you've seen that transformation happen with so many people, but how much it completely really brought such clarity to the, my dharma and the work that I wanted to do with helping as a psychologist, so that mental health was just not stuck in our heads, and the ways in which the body is such a portal to connection. But then also, I know with your books and your work, it's also really that spiritual element. And I think that's one of the ways in which maybe there's one of the main ways maybe there's a difference too in our books. I don't go into a lot of the spiritual side of it so much as just bodyfulness as a way to really to be integrated, to learn from what's happening within, and yoga being the main somatic tool that I talked about to help with bodyfulness. But then when I was thinking about the spirituality piece, that seemed like a whole nother book. So I didn't really delve into it that much, other than the ways I bring in Tantra, a little bit of Tantra as a way of just accepting pleasure in our lives. So that's where I thought it'd be neat to also just learn about what you talk about with the sutras.
One thing I do know about your work that I think what I've always thought of about your work is that tantric perspective of every single thing in our life should there's no reason why we have to think of it as bad, or no reason why we have to kind of be in that shame spiral, and that yoga actually teaches us that, and I mean teaches us on a tangible level, whether it's the physical practice or the meditative practice, that it is okay to be embodied, and at least that's the way I translate yoga. I know there are some people who believe that it's about getting out of our bodies completely and just staying in the spiritual plane. But for me, it's about stepping fully into my body wholeheartedly, right? And experiencing every single emotion, every sensation, not being afraid of any of that, knowing that if something is going to cause me suffering, that's going to give me up. I don't have to, wind myself up about my behavior. And I think that's one thing I really know about your work is that you kind of break that chain between, or break the bonds of maybe some religious society saying, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't feel this, you shouldn't be this, you shouldn't be acting like this. And that is kind of, that's presence work. And that is yoga, because what you're saying is be fully present to whatever it is you're feeling. And that's pleasure. Even if it comes across as like anger in the moment, it's still more pleasurable. It's not going to cause suffering.
Yeah, I think it's like, how did something such as pleasure that is so life affirming become this dirty word and this dirty concept? I think it's because it's powerful. And same with, like erotic energy, which is one aspect of pleasure that I talk about in the book, that it's something so powerful that it then became demonized.
So the taboo of pleasure. Yeah. Where does that come from?
It comes from, I think religion, from people not being able to handle ambiguity, wanting to have everything in a category, in a box, and, for things that are, more nuanced and, can have all this sort of different potential in different ways that, you know, maybe we have to contain those things that are so powerful and would take us off course from working, from toiling in the fields and having kids, and, you know, as opposed to like, well, what if actually some of that joy and pleasure, you know, gave us some more resilience and balance?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, obviously life is not all about pleasure. We can't be in pleasure all the time. And I think with yoga, part of what I really discovered is how it gave me, I learned from the inside out through my yoga practice, and a lot of it asana based, but also just the yogic philosophy. It really gave me such sort of inner strength in how to ride the wave from the inside out, as opposed to going to these things outside of us. And that's a lot of also what I talk about with bodyfulness in my book. And I think that, I mean, would you say that's one of the things that your students, a lot of your students start to learn about as well?
Yeah, like I get that all the time, that people will say, I'm so much stronger than I thought I was, right? I'm so much more resilient. I can bounce back faster. And like I said about, you know, something being pleasurable, even if it's not pleasure, it's our understanding that once we understand, and you know, yoga is one way to learn it, there are other ways to learn it, but once we understand that every single thing that we feel is transitory and is not going to be forever, it's not permanent, that even those lows, you know, like you see, I don't know, something where you're so in grief, you're grieving, and even that grief to me has an element of pleasure, because I want to feel deeply, you know, and I know that it's not going to kill me to feel deep grief. You know, I think a lot of people don't know that. I think depression being, you know, just such a taboo. If you feel depression fully and understand, and I'm not talking about clinical depression or not, but you know, when those waves come in where you're like, I don't really want to get out of bed today, we don't give ourselves the pleasure of being in bed all day, because that's how we feel. And I think if we understood that this too shall pass, if we really understood that, and I think that's what yoga, even the yoga postures, maybe especially the yoga postures, teach us, because we're in that pose for 30 breaths, right? And we're in the 25th breath, and we're thinking, there's no way I can stay in this, or this is awful, this is horrible, this is the worst. And then you get to the 31st breath and you're like, oh, that was great. What was I bitching about? You know, like, there was actually some pleasure involved with that. Yeah. And knowing that you can do that and make it through such high levels of sensation, be it physical or, you know, more mental or spiritual or emotional, that gives us the ability, I think, to go out and walk through our lives and more fully embodied. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I'm so grateful to my yoga teacher training with you, because then it also set me down this path of also learning a lot more just about somatic psychology, because of the ways, I mean, I know for myself and other people, we'd be like, this was released from my body. I didn't know, like, I didn't know that I was carrying emotions in my hips. What? And like the little kind of inner scientist in me, like, wanted to understand that, even though there's part of me also that's like, I don't care. I just know from a felt sense perspective what happened. Right. But especially in like writing a book or just trying to also kind of talk with other clients about it, I went down a path of learning a lot about somatic psychology and how just also, I mean, what yogis have known for 5,000 years, now science is confirming the ways in which to that, you know, on a subtle body level, whether it be also with our energy and our chakras, and also just from a muscular kind of neurofascial standpoint, that if we don't have these ways just to connect to self and to like discharge and move it through, that that dis-ease turns into disease. And so I thought, I mean, that there's just so many offshoots of how I felt like my yoga practice has been helpful for me in connecting, but then also releasing and like letting go.
Yes. And I'm sure helping your clients too. You know, has it been challenging to convince people that there is muscle memory, there is memory of trauma, physical memory of trauma, or stress or held tension in the body? Has that been a hard one?
It seems like less and less so. I mean, I feel like there's such a renaissance right now of people getting that more and more, but also it could be those are, you know, maybe I'm in a select group of
Yeah.
people that get that,
Right.
but I mean, I remember you saying, don't you love when people quote you've said back to you? Like
And I never remember. I'm always like, what?
I know.
I said
I know.
that?
Whenever I have a client that's like said that, they're like, I remember, Rachel, when you said da da da, and I'm like, oh shoot, what's it gonna be? But I do remember you saying that really kind of the best way to quote unquote convince somebody is just have them step on the mat, have them go and be in the practice, and
Right.
because our body is such a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's powerful enough, just being in your body.
Yeah, I think it's still, you know, how many years have I been teaching? I don't know, almost 40 now, but it still amazes me every single time that someone will have that emotional release in a physical pose, you know? And I remember the very first time I witnessed it, it was with my teacher, Anna Forrest, who she was like my very first teacher. I knew really nothing about yoga, and I got on the mat. I was doing an intensive with her, and she put everybody into a wheel pose, made us hold it for like 5 minutes. And the whole room started, except for me, because I was like, what's going on here? I was like 21 years old. I was like, why are people screaming in this bridge or in this back bed? But it's such an opener, you know, and she doesn't let you come out. And so what happens is all that stuff comes up, like you said, to be released. And there's no way to tell people that's going to happen. But still to this day, it shocks me when it happens, you know, and I've seen it hundreds of, probably thousands of times. Yeah.
Well, and when we think about how, so then when we're actually like really are embodied and we're being with, you know, the different emotions that then come up and like what is revealed to us, I think of how I had a major uncoupling not long after my yoga teacher training, and how there's sort of this joke of how, and I've heard this from so many different people in different trainings, how there can be a lot of divorces, a lot of, you know, people quitting their job, or these major kind of changes that take place after doing an intense experience like that. What do you think about that?
I was going to say that's what I hear the most. Is, in fact, there's some spouses years back, you know, this was probably 10 years ago. There was, I don't know, in one teacher training, I would say half of the people ended up leaving their husbands or wives or whatever. And so I actually got calls from those people, and they were like, your teacher training promotes divorce. And remember, I had discounts for single parents, and they're like, and then you reward them for being a single parent after you create a divorce. And I was like, hey, that's not me. That was all, you know. Yeah. Someone had a realization. Yoga, you can't do yoga and not be more self-aware. You can't, you know, and that when you become self-aware, you wake up to what's always been in front of your face, like, you know, like nerve pain or a stiff neck. A lot of people say, I don't want to do yoga because it gives me a stiff neck. And I would say, most of the time, no, it doesn't give you a stiff neck. It makes you understand you've had a stiff neck, maybe for years, right? You understand, oh, now I feel it again. So it brings us into a state of awareness, and then we see there's a lot of pain and suffering going on around us.
Yeah, and into like your own inner voice, like what is your truth? And like I know for me, I mean, so much of it is that I really always felt like so different within my family in some ways, or just, you know, that misunderstood and thinking that different meant bad or wrong, and just how I was able to come into like, no, I actually like the essence of me and kind of all the different elements and layers actually like I'm gonna embrace. And so it just gave me confidence more from the inside out rather than like the head down. It was really it's like kind of from the bottom up or from the inside out, versus sort of the shoulds and the storylines, and just helping get rid of some of the bullshit beliefs. And it's but, you know, but for people who, I know people who also just feel like it's, you know, the yoga craze, they don't want to get into, they're reluctant. And sometimes I want to also explain that it can be something really personal, like, so, you know, different from person to person. It doesn't have to be this one uniform thing. You can find different styles or different ways to bring it into your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But Yeah.
Well, and I think these days it's very easy to look around and find something that does work for you. There's so much online. There are so many people out there willing to work one-on-one with you at this point. I mean, I would say to anyone who's listening to any of your clientele, if they want, if they're even slightly curious, and go to yoga, try a yoga class, look at one on YouTube, you know, check out what your work, because there's, like you said, there are so many styles and so many ways to reach in and take back yourself with the capital S, you know, and we're all missing that. We all need that. I think COVID pushed us, you know, into understanding that there's angst that we have to deal with, and yoga is a really nice way to deal with that angst.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I just try to say to people, you know what, maybe don't even make it about yoga. Like, let's take away that languaging and just like, are you even in your body? Like,
yeah, are you in your body?
Yeah. What if you stretched? Like, how does it feel to stretch?
Yeah.
You know, or to go outside.
Take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath, or put your feet on the earth and feel your feet. Yeah, exactly. It's just tangible. I call that tangible presence. You know, it doesn't have to be called yoga. It's just being tangibly present, deciding to listen to your breath, deciding to listen to your heartbeat, deciding to feel your legs, deciding to feel the earth underneath your feet, being with your, you know, seeing whatever there is to see, perceiving of what's inside. Yeah. Yeah. Tangible presence.
Tell everybody a little bit about like what inspired you to write your books. I remember that you had started, I mean, back when I was in Utah, you had started and been writing then. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah. So yeah, this book is a result of my major book, which is the yoga, my interpretation of the Yoga Sutras. It is, and then the offshoots are like practices inspired by the sutras, a sutra study guide, and then I wrote another book about what Yalapa taught me. So when I decided to write this book, it was after many, many years of teacher trainings and discussing the sutras and just getting so much information. And I'm an avid reader, and I've read so many translations on the sutras. And the way that we did the sutras, I'm sure you remember, is I would assign a different translation to every teacher in training, and then we discussed the differences between the translations and the biases that were found therein, which made it really interesting for me. I always learned a lot. And so I just decided to compile everything, all of my musings into this book. Also, the way that I've put the book together is to give you kind of a practical perspective on the sutras. So how do these sutras, these 196 aphorisms, you know, that could be very, very esoteric and off-putting, how can they just apply to our lives? You know, what does it mean to, what's another translation or perspective on brahmacharya, for instance, where if you read it in most texts, they'll say, well, that means you have to be celibate. Well, what if it doesn't mean that? You know, what if we say it means, anyway, it's left up to interpretation. So I think it's a wonderful, I like it a lot. I think for people who want to jump in and learn the sutras and let them and have them apply to their lives, this is a really good book, even if I do say so myself.
So, you're like, if I do say so myself. Yeah. Oh God. I mean, writing, talk about like, you know, it's like the yoga of writing. Of
oh
like,
my gosh.
Yeah. I can't even believe I would have never written a book had it not been for a global pandemic. I think that's the only way I actually got it done. You didn't have that as you know, an excuse to be able to get it in. You did it.
I didn't, but I did make myself go and live in Mexico for 6 months. And, you know, I paid my rent in advance, so I couldn't just leave, because that would have been an option. Once I had to sit down at the table every day, I could have been like, I'll just go back, you know? So I did set it up with that in mind, that I was giving myself those 6 months to write that book. And I was not going to leave until it was done. There was too much, you know, it was just, like you said, it was years and years of compiling. When I had all of my notes, it, you know, took up a suitcase.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was definitely time. And I love it because I also was able to put, like, with every sutra, I put a quote, which, as you know, is my thing. I love the quotes. So, you know, all of that was super fun. But yeah, there is a yoga to writing. It's very lonely. It's scary. once you get done and you're thinking, will anyone ever read this book? Will anyone ever understand this book? And it is personal to me. It's my personal interpretation. So there's a lot of course, from the yoga community, a lot of backlash because I'm white, I'm a woman. I've never been to India. Who am I? But my whole point is everyone should have access to this information. Everyone.
Yeah. Well, and the who am I to X, Y, and Z, that, I mean, gosh, that can come up with anything, right? And just in how we, especially when we're trying something new and having courage and to take the risks. But also, I think that in the ways that yoga can sometimes be cathartic, I mean, writing can sometimes as well too, or at least bring up when we sit with ourselves and what clarity can come up. Clarity that might maybe be shit we want to push back.
Embarrassing,
down, but
humiliating. Yeah.
Yes. Painful, not pleasure. Going back to the pleasure topic, not pleasurable. But then it's sort of like, it does make you awake. I mean, you're more awake later.
Definitely. Yeah. And have you noticed that when you write, it's like you're writing things that you didn't know that you knew? Did that happen to you? Where you write something, you're like, what did I just write?
Or it's like, I knew it on some level, like a pre-verbal level, and then muddling through it and giving the words to it, then it's like, now I know it in like kind of the intellectual level. I mean, so much of life is about like, we learn it up here or something, and then maybe trying to see where it's corresponding elsewhere within us. Whereas this, I felt like, there was something within that just said, I really have to, I have to write this book. But then there's a lot of it that I was like, but how exactly, I don't know how to put some of this into words,
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when we're talking about aspects of embodiment or bodyfulness. I mean, it is it's so visceral. How do you take these things that are, their very nature and like kind of part of the mystery is that they're ineffable. They aren't like words really existing even for it.
Yeah.
But so for somebody who hasn't done yoga and doesn't like know what the sutras are, I mean, for them, it's basically, you would say the sutras are like a guide for how to be really kind of awakened in your life. Even
simpler than that, to reduce suffering of your own suffering and the suffering of the planet, and it's,
you're like, even simpler than that, just the suffering of the planet.
just to reduce suffering.
Nothing much.
But I think that is a good, because it doesn't have to be so esoteric. It doesn't have to be about how can I become a better person. What I love about, and this is, I know I've said this to you before, but what I loved and learned in Mexico more than anywhere else, no yoga taught me this was Mexico. You don't have to try to be a better person. People in Mexico aren't trying to be better. They're enjoying their lives. They're just living. That's all they're doing. They're living, and I'm not, I mean, that's a huge generalization, but you know what I mean? Like, you go there and the spirit of Mexico is live, and that is what evolves consciousness, not us trying to find ourselves, but just realizing we're here. We don't need to be sitting and meditating for 6 hours a day to find ourselves. We step into the water, we step into our legs, we step into our breath. We're here. That's it. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And it's easier to embody when you don't have all of the other stuff around,
Yeah. And like you said, rather than trying to be a better person, just being oneself, being in the essence of oneself.
Yes.
And I think it was in our yoga teacher training that I first learned about David White. And I remember him saying, he was talking about one of his poems. It was like an audio recording. And he was talking about how to our soul doesn't care if we like won or lost, if we are succeeded or failed, just that we're living life our way. And I think of that is also a big part of like what your teachings and yoga has been for me, is that it's like, how can I not be just all this crap that's for other people or the other expectations, but just what does my soul want? Does it mean I might look foolish or fail? Does it mean I might write a book and nobody reads it, or I get bad reviews or whatever, but my soul, like being able to even like listen and know what your soul's journey is,
Yes.
That I think
Yes.
is, and you can't know that unless you actually are like, stop and you're in yourself, you're in the different parts of yourself, and really
Yes.
integrate.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, don't
Mm-hmm.
get me wrong, of course I still get led astray, and don't know what I'm doing, and it's like, what's my motive right now? What am I getting my panties in a bundle for? And then get back into my breath and my body, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to join on one of your retreats next winter, and we could have like a little pleasure circle,
Oh my
pleasure
gosh,
book
yes.
club or something.
And now people are thinking, what is a pleasure circle?
It's like, yeah, let's come and just all chat about all the different ways that we should rejoice in our
Yes.
pleasures. But
Yeah.
it's people like tease me about that word all the time,
Mm-hmm.
being a pleasure expert. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
great. I mean, like, we're gonna why not? Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. And if I can get people to laugh a little bit at the idea,
Mm-hmm.
all right, there's worse things. But.
Well, I loved what you did for the retreat last year. It was really great. And it really helped put people at ease with talking about some hard topics too, that
Mm-hmm.
around sex and sensuality and sexuality and
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. So yeah, you're great at what you do.
Oh, well,
Thanks so much.
likewise. And I'm so happy that I could have some time with you. I mean, like, we could have like a whole day just to talk about like the way your teacher training impacted my life, but I don't know if that'll be a different point.
Well, thanks, right? Because let me say that I am very grateful to hear that. It's always nice. I never ever get tired of hearing that. And it's not because I see you as such a success in the world, that to know that I had a little bit of influence on that. And I'm not gonna take all the credit, but it's very heartwarming. So yeah, thank you.